Welcome to this session on Ionic. Till now, we have covered the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, TypeScript, and Angular. I know it has been a lot to take in, but all of that effort was to create a code which will create a web page as well as a mobile application. If you want to create a mobile application without using Ionic, you will have to learn Java, which is very different from JavaScript. To create Android applications, to create Windows application, you will have to learn C hash or C sharp, and to create iOS applications, you will have to learn C++. So compared to that, I believe using Ionic is a very simple task. So what exactly is Ionic? You can think of Ionic as a library to Angular which provides inbuilt components and also allows you to use native services which are not found in web browser but are common in mobile phones. Like accessing the internet internal storage is not possible on a web page. Let's first go through the contents and discuss in depth why we should be using Ionic. So the contents are: why should we use Ionic? A hello world application in Ionic, and then we'll be making a complicated or a more complex application, which is the shopping website dashboard. So why Ionic? As I said earlier, Ionic can be used to create web apps which can run on all platforms. But how does Ionic make it possible? Converting code from one language to another perfectly is very hard task. So how does Ionic manage to convert HTML, JS, and CSS code to Java, CPP, and C hash? Well, actually, it does not convert the code. How does it then make the code cross-platform compatible? Well, all modern mobile phones have a browser inside them. This browser can read HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code, which is universal. What Ionic does is that it starts a web browser and displays the app inside the browser. If we remove the URL parts of a web browser in a mobile phone, it looks very similar to an app. Many of the apps which we nowadays use are actually running inside the browser, and you may not even be aware of them. These apps are called web apps. Moreover, Ionic supports Angular, so it is really easy to make dynamic pages in Angular and use them in Ionic. Next, let's see how to build the Hello World application. I believe most of you have already run the commands to create a Hello World application. Ionic has provided wrappers over the Angular commands and provides some extra functionality to the Angular commands. So first, the npm install command will install Ionic globally on the system. Next, Ionic start will start a new project with the name Hello World. Ionic has some pre-made, frequently used templates, namely tabs, side menu, blank, list, my first app, and conference. We will be using the side menu template in this session. When asked to integrate capacitor, please choose yes, as we will be using capacitor to convert our web code to Android. Similar to ngserve open command, Ionic Serve also runs the web page on the browser and provides real-time reload whenever any file inside the project directly is updated. So I have already created the Hello World app and I have opened it inside the browser. So this is how the Hello World app looks. So when the width of the web browser is small, the side menu collapses, and when the width is large, it is automatically visible. So that's the template side menu. So now that we have our hello world, let's see what we are going to build today. So we have had a look on how to build the static homepage using Angular. Let us see how to build a truly dynamic web page using Angular and Ionic. We will be building a shopping app which looks like this. We will also see how to convert this web page to web app using Android Studio, which I believe you already have installed. The links for the installation are in the description. We will run the app in an emulator, which is basically a mobile running on your PC. Mind you, if you have a laptop which has less than 16 GB of RAM, then please don't run the emulator. Rather, use your mobile for running the app. So now that we are clear on how to build the app, let us get started. By the way, some of you might be wondering that why am I getting a black screen? Many of you will be getting a white screen. That's because in my Ubuntu default settings, I have chosen the dark mode. If I choose the light mode, then the web page I see is white. This is not the default way any web page works. Ionic provides us this functionality that in dark mode, it automatically creates a different CSS for the web page. So I'll stay in my dark mode as I prefer that, but you can work in the light mode and still your UI would look really nice. So let's start our shopping dashboard. So first of all, if you open the folder, the project folder using Visual Studio Code, you will be able to see a lot of files are already present there. You don't need to be afraid as this is very similar to Angular. We'll be concerning ourselves with only a few number of files. So first, let's go inside source, then app. If you remember, inside Angular, we created a component named home. The folder is very similar to that and is pre-built in the side menu template. Let's remove this as we would be creating our own component now. So I'll delete this folder and you'll get some errors. Obviously, because the routing was using the home folder, but as it's not found right now, so we are getting the error. Let's fix those errors. So first of all, we'll set the redirect. So whenever there is an empty path, we want to redirect to home. This is very similar to what we did in Angular. Next, if the path is home, then we want to load children from the home folder, which we'll be creating later on. And the name of that module will be home page module. We have yet to create this, and that's why it's giving us an error. Let's see how to create this home component, or in Ionic, you can call it the home page. So in Ionic, to generate a page, you have to use this command, Ionic generate page home. So using this command, you can generate a new page. A page is very similar to a component. You can see the error now is gone from here. Let's save it. So there have been some changes. So I'll compare. Yeah, and we want to keep this. So let's do this. As you can see, there are no errors right now, and we are getting a blank page with home written on top of that. Also, we have our side menu bar present, but the button for side menu bar is not visible right now. So let's see why are we getting this home text and where are we getting it from. Inside home folder, you can see that there are many files. Usually in the component, if you create just a component, then you can see the home component spec.ts, home component.ts, and home page.scss and home page.html. If you create a page, these two additional files are also generated. You don't need to worry as we won't be changing them. So let's directly get to homepage.html. Here you can see that in the Ion title, we have a home already written. That's why we are able to see home over here. So now that we have created the home page and have set the route in the app routing module.ts, let's start building our shopping dashboard. So first of all, we'll be working on the side menu. This has been defined in app component.html. You can see there is already a lot of boilerplate code present inside app component.html. As we won't be needing these labels, let's remove that. The code for labels is present over here. So first, let's remove this. I'll be saving this. Now you can see the labels section is gone. So let's analyze what is there inside app component.html. You must be seeing some very unfamiliar elements present over here. So let's understand what exactly Ion app, Ion split pane, and so on the elements are. So Ionic, what it does is it creates its own components. It has pre-built components which we'll be using to create our web page. In Angular, we mostly used basic HTML elements like div, input, and so on. What Ionic has done is that it has created some wrapper components over the basic elements. So we'll be using Ion app, Ion list instead of just plain list, and so on. So you can just think of these special elements as being a wrapper over the basic elements. If you want to know more about what exactly Ion split pane or Ion content does, you'll have to go and read the docs. Ionic docs are very easy and fun to read. So this is the Ionic doc web page. Usually, you will be able to see the code also on the same page. Let's search for Ion content. Or just let's go for Ion button right now. So this is the documentation for Ion button. You can see that they have also shown us an example of different kinds of buttons. If you want to have a look at the code, you can click on view source and all the code of your TS file and the HTML file is present over here. That's really nice because if you directly want to use this type of button, you can directly go here and search for the success button and copy and paste this code. If you want to understand the other important attributes of Ion button, then you can have a look at these documents. So if you want to master Ionic, you will have to learn and read a lot of Ionic documentation. So you can see that Ion has some predefined Ion card and content and header and so on. We'll be using a bit of them. I won't be explaining in depth what they do. If you want to understand, you can later go on and have a look at the docs. So let's go back to our code. Yeah, so here is our code. Let's have a look at what we actually want to make. So I already have the shopping dashboard created in advance. You can see that there is no side menu in this view, and the top toolbar looks a bit different from the default toolbar, which just contains home. So we need to change the toolbar, and in the empty space, we'll have to dynamically add categories and trending clothes. Moreover, if you go into the developer mode and click on this button, which actually looks like a mobile, you will be able to see how the web page will look in a mobile. Just refresh it. You can see now we have the side menu symbol or icon. If you click it, you will be able to access the side menu, which was not available on a web browser. And the top nav bar is very different from what we saw in the browser. Also, this looks very nice. If I change the default appearance of my Ubuntu settings, then you can see the app is in light mode and still it looks really nice. Let's revert back to the dark mode. Now, this is how we want our app to look. So let's start building it. So first of all, let's go and see the app component.html page. In this, what we want to do is we want to have this side nav bar only when the platform is a mobile. Otherwise, we just want the top toolbar. Let's see how to do that. Let's first assume that we have a variable which is true if the browser is opened on a desktop and is false when it's opened on a mobile phone. So we can use the Angular ng if directive along with the variable to conditionally render this element. So Ion menu will only be rendered if its desktop is false. Also, if you remember, in Angular, we had a router outlet, whereas in Ionic, we have an Ion router outlet, which is a wrapper over the standard Angular router outlet. It does a very similar thing that whenever we go to a different URL, the contents inside that component or page is loaded inside the Ion router outlet. So this will always be there, present on all the different paths, whereas all the specific code for each path can be put inside this Ion router outlet. But we are getting now an error that isDesktop is not defined. Let's go to appComponent.ts and define our isDesktop variable. Here, there is a lot of code. You can delete the labels as we are not using it right now. And inside, so let's create a variable named isDesktop. And let's initialize it with true. So as isDesktop is true, ng if condition that is not a desktop is false. Hence, we don't have any side nav bar now. That's great. But how do we dynamically set this isDesktop value by checking whether the browser is open on a mobile phone or a desktop? Let's see how to do that. So inside this platform, so I'll first explain what this platform is. So the platform is a service provided by Ionic. The service is a technical term. You can just think of this as a class. So the platform is an object of the service or the class platform. We can use the object to access the member functions of the class platform. So in ng on init, we'll be initializing our isDesktop. Let's see how to do that. So this dot is desktop equal to this dot platform. So platform has an inbuilt member function is, which takes in a string and returns whether the platform is desktop is true or false. So if the browser is open in a desktop, then this will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. Let's save this. And now you can see that by default, there is no side nav bar if I'm opening it inside a desktop. To see how it looks on a mobile phone, go to the debugger or developer mode and click on mobile view. Remember to refresh it once. And you can see that now the side nav bar is present. Even though the icon is not present, if you drag your mouse, then you will be able to access the side nav bar. That's really cool because we have conditionally now displayed a content using Angular. Next, let's make our home page a bit pretty. Before making our home page pretty, actually, let's make our side nav bar a bit pretty by changing the inbox, outbox, and favorites, which is not applicable to our shopping dashboard. You can see there is a variable named app pages, which has all these contents. In appComponent.html, an ng for directive is used to access all these individual elements of the list and then display the content. So we'll be changing the contents inside these app pages and automatically see that the side nav bar has changed. So first of all, we'll have the title as home. The URL will be home as well. And for the icon, we'll use home. So you might be wondering, how do we get the home icon by just using the home string? You can go to the ionicicons.com. So Ionic has some predefined Ionic icons which are really nice. You can search for home and you can see that they have a pre-built home icon. So that's why just typing in home works. If you want to use some other icon, you'll have to search over here, let's say cart, and copy the code they show here for how to display a cart. We'll be using this later on. So let's directly change the code here. I already have written it down earlier, so I'll be just copy and pasting it over here. As we don't have many pages right now, I will be setting the URL to home for all of them, but the icons and the title would be different. Let's save this and see how it looks. You can see that the title and the icons have changed. That's really nice. If you want to change the contents over here, you can change them by changing the text present over here. I won't be changing that. Let it be the way it is right now. So now that we are done with the side nav bar, let's start focusing on the main home page. So first of all, let's focus on the home page toolbar. What we want our web page to look like is this. On a browser, it should display men, women, accessories, and profile, and a cart at the end, along with a shopping dashboard button. And in a mobile phone, it should just display home. So we'll need to use the ng if directive along with checking what the platform is. So let's go to homepage.ts. Here we need to use the platform. Just a moment. Yeah, so here we need to have to use the platform, as by default platform is not loaded over here. We'll be importing the platform manually. So first of all, we'll have to import platform. If you go over to app component.ts, you can see platform is imported from @Ionic/Angular. Let's copy this. So now we have our platform. To create an instance of the platform, we can do private platform, which is the name of the instance, which is of type platform. So if you put a colon after the variable, then you can define the type of the variable. This links the instance to the platform service. Let's not get into what service exactly is. Let's just focus that we have the platform instance of a platform class over here. To check whether this is a desktop or not, we can set this.isDesktop equal to this.platform.is of desktop. IsDesktop is not defined, so we can manually set xDesktop equal to this. So we now have whether the browser is open on a desktop or a mobile app using the platform library. Let's save this. Also, let's open the homepage.html file. In this, we want to display home if it is not a desktop. Otherwise, we want the shopping dashboard along with the menu items to be displayed. So here we'll be using the ng if directive width is not a desktop. If it's not a desktop, then we want the home icon. Also, we would like the navigation buttons to be present. For that, you can create the navigation button using Ion buttons. So this is a standard code which you can easily find in Ionic's documentation. You have to read the documentation once. If you have created this project, then you can reuse the code in a new project. Ion buttons. So I'll select the slot as start. This means that the buttons will be available in the starting of the toolbar. This is defined inside Ion buttons, which is provided by Ionic. Next, we'll have an Ion menu button, and that's it. I'll save this, and you can see that I now have a button to open the side menu bar. So nice, but we only want to display this if it's a desktop. Let's see if we can see this button inside a basic browser. I'll refresh this, and you can see the entire toolbar has disappeared. That's nice. So that means our ngif directive is working. So next, let's write the code of what should be done if it is a desktop. So first of all, we'll create an Ion toolbar. Inside that, we'll have the ngif directive, which is true if it is a desktop. So the content inside this toolbar will be displayed if the browser is on a desktop. Next, let's have the Ion title inside it. We'll set this Ion title to shopping dashboard. Let's save this. So you can see now the shopping dashboard is present. Let's create a button out of that so that we can interact with this shopping dashboard. Currently, clicking this does nothing. So to create a button, you can directly use the button, which is by default available in HTML, or you can use the Ion button, which provides much more functionality to the basic button element in HTML. So let's put the shopping dashboard inside the Ion button. You can see a nice looking button has been created, but we want it to look a bit different as it is on the toolbar. Let's style this button. So first of all, we want the background to be transparent. So I'll set the fill attribute to be clear. So you can see that the background is no longer filled. You can have a look at the documentation to understand the different attributes and what they do. Next, we have the color attribute. So I don't want the text to be blue. Let's keep it dark. So the text is not actually set to the black value, but the theme used is dark. In dark theme, we have the text to be white and the background to be black. Next, let's set the size of the button to be large. And on this button, we can also set the router link. What it does is, when this button is pressed, it will automatically change the URL path to the value specified inside the router link. Currently, we have only one page. So I'll set the link to that page. So you can see now The shopping dashboard is large, and clicking on that actually redirects us to the same page. Let's quickly fill in more of the buttons which were seen on the toolbar. I'll be copy pasting the code which I have already written. It's a very simple code, and it is very similar to the shopping dashboard. Just the size has been set to the default value. I'll save this, and you can see now that our menu or the toolbar looks very similar to the one we had in this view. But we also need this cart button. Let's see how to do that. So after our Ion title is over, let's create another button. To have the button at the end of the toolbar, so this should be inside the toolbar. At the end of the toolbar, let's set the slot equal to end. This is an Ionic attribute which will set all the contents inside this element at the end of the toolbar. Let's have an Ion icon with the name cart outline, which we had seen earlier on the Ionic page where the icons were present. You can copy and paste the code directly from the website. Let's see how it looks. So yeah, we have the card, but we don't want the background. So let's set fill equal to clear. And also we like to have a bit of a padding. So we can also set the class to be Ion padding end. Ionic has some predefined CSS classes which we can use just like Bootstrap. Also, the card color is blue. I want the dark blue. So let's set the color to dark. Nice. So now we have a white colored card which is similar to the one we wanted. Now that our toolbar is done, let's go over to content. So inside Ion content, what we want is to create the, let's have a look at the web page. So inside the contents, we first want some space, then categories, then inside categories, we want to display these cards, and then the same, the trending clothes and other cards. So let's start writing our code. First of all, we'll have to create the categories section. For that, I'll create an Ion item, and inside that, I'll create an H3 header with categories. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, so this looks nice. We'll just want to have a space on top of that. So we can do that by directly setting the style to be margin top to be, let's say, 10 pixels. Maybe let's say we should increase it to 30 pixels. Yeah, so that looks nice. Maybe 25 would look better. Yeah, not much difference. Next, we need to create a container system which is very similar to Bootstrap. You can notice that this container is responsive and works very similar to the Bootstrap container. Ionic has a pre-built grid system. Let's use that. So first, I'll need to create an Ion grid, very similar to the class container. Next, we'll need an Ion row. Inside the Ion row, there must be an Ion call. So we don't actually want one column, we want 4 columns. And we'll want to use the ng for directive for creating these columns. So in Ion call, I will use ng for equal to let cat of categories. We have yet to define the variable categories, but let's assume there is a list of the categories. So this Ion column will be created as many number of times as there are number of categories. Inside the Ion call, we want to create a card which looks like this. Let's see how to do that. So we'll first create an Ion card. You can read the docs to know what exactly Ion card does. It creates a bit of a shadow and a card-like structure. Also inside Ion card, we can use Ion card header and Ion card content. Inside Ion header, we can use Ion card subtitle. You can just go on the documentation site and by default you will find a sample code and you can copy and paste it over here. So let's say inside cat we have the description which we'll put as a subtitle, which will be starting from 399 and so on. And we have an Ion card title, which let's say is named title. So we have to just create this variable and we'll have our card ready. We have to yet put the image over here. So I'll create an image which has source to be cat.image URL. What I am doing here is that I am dynamically setting the source value of the image. If you remember, source is used to provide the link to where the image is present. So if cat.image URL changes, then the image source would change and a different image will be shown over here. So now that our card is ready, let's go and first create the categories variable. We'll have to create it inside the homepage.ts file. Let's create it next to xdesktop. So categories equal to an empty list. We'll initialize this inside the constructor. I'll copy paste the code. If you are familiar with dictionaries, this will be very simple to understand. Even if you are not, I'll explain it so that you have a general idea of what we are doing. So we have created a list in which the individual elements are dictionaries or objects. I'll go with the dictionary as that's used commonly in Python, and people nowadays are a lot comfortable in Python compared to JavaScript or C++. So inside this dictionary, the key is name and its value is t-shirt. Similarly, there is another key named desk. We'll set this as description. Instead of name, we'll use title. And then we have the image URL for that category. I have set the image URL as assets, but we don't have anything inside the assets. So first of all, let's add the assets folder inside this. So you can see there is some predefined icon present over here. What we want to do is I have my own assets and I can add them over here. So I'm just copying this and I'm pasting it over here. So now I have these images inside the assets folder. So now that the variable categories has been defined, let's save this and let's save this also. Now you can see that we have our cards over here. It looks really nice on a very big screen, but on a smaller screen, I don't want it to get this small. If you have noticed, we get bigger cards as they are broken down into two different rows. If you remember, this was the property of the Bootstrap container if we used call MD or call LG instead of plain call. Ionic also has similar features. Let's see how to do that. So here is uh, here is our Ion call. In that, we can set checkpoints of where we want to break our columns into different rows. So this Ion column, as it has not been defined as medium or anything, uniformly divides the space into the number of items present over here. What we'll do is we'll set the checkpoint that on large screens, you should take 3 columns of the 12 imaginary columns present. So if there are 4 items, then all of them would take 3, 3, 3, 3. So they'll all be present in a single row. For the medium screen checkpoint, we'll be setting the width to be 6 columns. This means that 2 cards would be there in one row and the other 2 cards would be present in another row. Moreover, when the size of the screen is very small, we want the content to take the entire width of the screen. So we can set that when the size of the screen is extra small, then we'll be using the entire 12 imaginary columns available. Let's save this. And you can see that on a medium sized window, each row contains 2 cards. But when I go smaller than that, then each card is containing the 12 imaginary columns. So it takes now 100% of the width. So now that we have our categories section ready, let's create the clothes section. This is very similar to the categories section. So I'll be copy pasting most of the code. So we have the Ion categories over here. I'll be putting some space. And this is the code for trending clothes. I want some padding to be present between the categories and the trending clothes. So I'll be setting this over here. Let's save this. Obviously, as in this ng4 directive, clothes have not yet been defined. We have to define it inside homepage.ts. So I'll be copying the code for defining the clothes. I'll also have to set an empty clothes variable over here. And that's it. When I save it, you can see we have the trending clothes section available as well. So now we have created our shopping dashboard. Let's have a look at it, how it will look on a light screen. So it looks great on a white mode also. That's really nice because this functionality is only available in Ionic. In normal web pages, you have to manually decide how your web page would look in a dark mode or in a light mode. So now that our dashboard has been made, we want to convert this to an app. That was the main goal of the workshop. We wanted to write a code for making a web browser and automatically convert it to a mobile application. First, let's just have a look how it looks on a mobile phone. So press F12 and go to the mobile view and refresh it once. You can see that it looks very similar to a general mobile application you have on your mobile. And it's really nice because we have spent what? Let's say if I had to code it myself, then this would have taken just 15 to 20 minutes. Even as a beginner, you will be able to write all this code in less than 45 minutes. And you have a very nice app like web page ready on your browser. And let me tell you, it will take less than 5 minutes for converting this web page to an Android application if you know the steps. Even if you don't know, you can just Google and read the documentation, and in less than 10 minutes, you will be able to create an application, a mobile application, which works on Android or iOS or Windows mobile phone using Android using this code which we have here right now. Let's see how to do that. So first of all, let's go to this website. The link to this is there in the description. So this is a website on how to use capacitor with Ionic. This capacitor is not the electrical capacitor you may have studied about. This is a independent library which will convert our Ionic code to an Android code or an iOS code and so on. So let's start using capacitor with Ionic. As we had already installed capacitor while initializing the new app, we can skip most of these portions. We'll have to start with Ionic build. The current code which we have been using has been in the developer mode or the testing mode. What we want to do is now convert it to the production code. So we have to do Ionic build. So I'll be doing Ionic build. This may take a lot of time. So while this Ionic build is happening, let's actually go over and see some of the interesting things. So, yep, this was our page. Let's talk about what localhost 8101/home actually means. For most of you, this would be 8100, not 101. I have opened two Ionic platforms. That's why one of them has 8,100 while the other has 8,101. So what does localhost exactly mean? Localhost, just like facebook.com, can be changed to an IP address, which is 127.0.0.1. This is the IP address of the current machine you are using. In any machine you are there, in any machine in which you are logged in, if you type 127.0.0.1, that means you are typing the address of the same machine. So we have our server running on the same machine in which I am showing you this code. That's why I'm using 127.0.0.1. If this server was running on a different machine and I wanted to see this on this browser, then I would have to type that IP address, and along with that I would have to specify 8101/home. Now what does this 8101 mean? It specifies the port on which our server is running. So to make it easier to understand, you can think of a port as actually a port allows you to run multiple servers on the same computer. So it can happen that you want to run two Ionic applications on the same computer. Now, if I type just 127.0.0.1, then the browser understands that I want to access a server on the same computer. But how does it understand which web page to display, as there can be many web pages running on the same computer? This port is used to specify which web page I want to look at. So by default, Ionic runs at 8,100, but while running, so while Ionic serve, you can specify the port to be a number between 1,000 to 65,000 approximately. So you have nearly 64,000 options to run multiple servers. So this is the port, and as you know, these URL parameters or the URL path is used to show different views to each person. So going to different views will allow you to change the way the browser renders the web page. One more thing, Angular and Ionic all are one-page applications. This means that all of the code which is used to display these cards and images are fetched at the single time when your browser opens the website. This is sometimes good and sometimes bad. Let's say you want to put an ngIf directive for showing a completely different web page to an admin and a completely different web page to a normal user. Then unnecessarily a lot of code, redundant code, will be fetched from the server. So Angular and Ionic both have provided us with some tools which we can use to partially load our website. That feature is called lazy loading. I'm just giving you an idea on what is happening behind the scenes. I will not be showing how the code is written because I believe it will confuse you a bit more. If you want to have an in-depth read about what I am talking about, you can go on Google and search about it. That's the best way to learn new things. So now, as our Ionic build has finished, let's go on to the next step. So the next step is telling our NPX capacitor to add iOS or Android. Currently, we'll be just building an Android app. To create an iOS app, you need to have a MacBook. So Let's issue this command. I believe this should not take much time. So let's wait for it. Yeah, so that's done. What has changed in the structure? So now you can see there is a www folder which was created on Ionic build. And also there is an Android folder which was created when we did npx cap add Android. Let's open this Android folder using Android Studio. So I have the folder here. I'll right click on it, open with other application, Android Studio, select. Or you can issue this command, npx cap open Android. But you might have to set the path and it might confuse some beginners. So better to just directly go on the folder and open it using Android. So this is our project in Android Studio. You can completely ignore all the files present over here. You will need to know Java or Kotlin to understand the Android code, but you don't need to. You can directly run this on an emulator. So to create a new emulator, you can open AVD Manager and there create a virtual device, set the type of hardware you want, a phone, a TV, a tablet. You can even choose the name or the model of your phone. You can specify the OS version. You'll have to download it and then you can start a new virtual machine on your computer. I have already created it, so I won't be creating a new one. I have a Pixel 2 model phone with the R API version, which is the latest one. So press this button after creating your emulator. One more thing to note is that if your machine has less than 16 GB RAM, then please don't create an emulator. It might hang your computer, and even if it does not hang, your computer will be very, very slow. So if you want to check how your app looks, you can directly have a look at it by connecting your mobile phone through a USB cable and enabling the debugger mode. The link to do that has been shown in the description. If you have any problems while doing that, you can ask us in the chat box or mail it to us so that we'll reply it to you later. Let's just build it by pressing the play button available over here. An emulator opens up. Now you can see we have our Hello World application over here. Just a moment. It's being currently built. So install successfully finished. Yeah. And this is how our app looks on a mobile phone. Isn't it nice? We just created a home page, like a web page, and it now looks like like most of the apps you see on your mobile phone. And to show that I'm not fooling you, that it's not a browser, you can see the Hello World application. And when I click on it, this application opens up. So that's it. That's how you can convert your web page using Ionic to a mobile app. If you want to create an iOS app, the commands are very similar. You just have to run npx cap iOS instead of npx cap Android, and that's it. So we'll be ending the Ionic session at this point. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I believe you learned a lot of new things. you may need to go and revise it so that you are able to understand. If you need some help, we are always there, and you can ping us with like we have put our contacts in the description. So thank you and have a nice day. Well, before that, kindly join the mentorship session so that all your Ionic related doubts can be cleared.